You all to the newest senator of the Whitewater Student Government. All righty. Wonderful. With that, we will move into appointment of 2 off-campus district seats. Is there anyone in the gallery tonight interested in running for appointment of one of our off-campus? Going once, going twice. Seeing none, with that, we'll move to the appointment of 3 off-campus districts, ASCR district seats. Is there anyone interested in running for an ASCR district seat tonight? Going once, going twice. Seeing none, with that, we'll move to the appointment of 2 Rock County district seats. Is there anyone interested in running for a Rock County district seat? Going once, going twice. Seeing none. Wonderful. With that, we will move into guest speakers, of which we have none, and to approval of agenda and minutes. There's a couple things that need to be changed, so if I miss anything, remind me, somebody make a motion. We'll start with the approval of the minutes from November 25th, 2024. Can I get a motion to approve? Senator Houston?
Move to approve.
Can I get a second? Seconded by Senator Carter. With that, the minutes from November 25th, 2024 have been approved. Can I get an acclamation? I'm sorry. Acclamation. Wonderful. Thank you. With that, we'll move on to the agenda for December 2nd, 2024. There's a couple changes we'll have to make. Starting with the date. Today is December 2nd. Madam Clerk, could you please have the record reflect that? Can I get unanimous consent to change that acclamation?
Acclamation.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And what else needs to be changed? And the session to session 27. Can I get unanimous consent? Any opposed? Going once, going twice, seeing none. Wonderful. What else would you use? Wonderful. Add oath of office to the first special orders, as we just did the oath of office. Any opposed? Going once, going twice, seeing none. Wonderful. We good? Oh, and remove item D, special orders. Thank you so much for bearing with us here. Any opposed? Seeing none. Change has been made. On to the agenda, and it's now approval for December 2nd, 2024. Can I get a motion to approve parliamentary treatise?
Move to approve.
Seconded by Senator Esther. Wonderful. With that, the agenda from December 2nd, 2024 has been approved. On to student issues and concerns. Are there any student issues and concerns in the gallery today? Going once. Going twice. Seeing none. Wonderful. With that, we will move a bit out of order on to unfinished business, starting with the SUFAC budget allocation recommendations for fiscal year 26. Chair Zimmer, you can take the podium. You can stand where you are. And Vice Chair Coos. You have the floor.
Chair of Educational Outreach.
You're welcome to join them if you'd like. Vice Chair of Educational Outreach, Patrice. The floor is yours. SUFAC leadership.
Great. Well, the floor is really yours to some extent because we're going to be voting today. Well, you're going to be voting. I'm just going to stand here and answer questions. You all heard everything that I had to say last week along with Nick, and just wanted to take a second to recognize Nicole being here as well. She's the vice chair of SUFAC, and so she assisted in this process as well diligently along with myself and Patricus, as well as every other member of the committee. No information has changed since last time we met, so basically sort of up to you to make an action, and if there's any concerns, then you can go from there, but there's not necessarily anything I need to say to initiate the process. I'm just here to answer questions along with my friends.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chair German. So the way this is going to work tonight, I will give a moment for Vice President Boehm or Advisor Dogan, I don't know who's handling it, but we'll pull up the allocation recommendations. And as they come up, I have them here in front of me as well. So the way this is going to work is we're going to go line item by line item, and we're going to open the floor up to possible discussion and adjustment.
I don't really know if I could speak, but...
No, you have the floor. Go ahead.
I mean, you don't necessarily need to go line item.
We will. Okay. So we're going to go line item by line item with a chance to discuss every line item.
They've done for years.
Well,
Okay.
you know.
And if there's anything that comes up, so for example, I'm going to use fictitious things. If it's floorboards recommended $600, it will sound like this. Floorboard requested $600. SUFAC recommendation, $600. Discussion, once, twice, none. On to the next one. If no one speaks, we'll move right on to the next one. If somebody speaks, all you have to do is raise your placard as such and say, I would just like to open the floor up to some discussion on that. If you have any questions regarding something, so say I say floorboards, you can raise your placard and say, just a quick question about floorboards. Chair Zimmerman, why were they funded $600? Why were they funded at all? Why were they not funded at all? You can ask any question whatsoever, essentially at any time. I'm going to yield very quickly to the parliamentarian to tell you a little bit about viewpoint neutrality. And from both a SUFAC lens and a WSG lens, just so we know that our questions stay in a good frame of reference and that any adjustments we make are done within SUF policy. Oh, you have a little, didn't know you had that.
Yeah. I want to say a little thing here.
You can stand.
Chair Zimmerman, if you'd like to butt in at any point, feel free to.
Floor's yours.
But yeah, stay viewpoint neutral. So if you are personal example, I'm a member of CASES, which is a student org, which is a SUF-funded student org. So if I had a complaint with what that would look like, with what that allocation was recommended by SUFAC, so I want to make an adjustment. I wouldn't make a motion, I wouldn't participate in the discussion, I would probably leave the room. So if you are a member of a student organization and so if you're a member of a student organization and I guess just make sure you're staying neutral on things, you're not like putting your opinion and taking your personal biases into what the budget should be.
Chair Zimmerman or Vice Chair Chris? You're welcome to ask.
So, I mean, basically, you're all trained on this. You all attended training. If you're appointed post-training, then it's sort of set leadership's job to get you in a position where you should be viewpoint neutral. If you have any questions or you feel like something might be not viewpoint neutral or anything, you can simply raise your placard and say point of clarification or point of information and sort of bring that to light. It's a great place to ask questions. Got a lot of great minds in the room. Basically, if it feels like maybe you shouldn't say this, probably go with your gut, is typically what I would say in some situations, because it's very easy to be like, ooh, I really want to say this, but my gut says this might not be the right thing to say. Maybe don't say it then. That's usually a good judge when it comes to viewpoint issues. Yeah, other than that, this should be pretty smooth sailing.
I would add, if there's a viewpoint neutrality issue that comes up, no worries. There are lots of people in the room who will point it out quite quickly. We'll move on. No worries. With that, we'll move right into doing line item by line item. Like I said, interrupt me at any time. I'm going to be kind of in on here, so if you raise your placard and I don't see you, I'm sure somebody will call me out, but just give it a little one of these. So I hear you. Sound good? Good.
Are we pulling it
Senator
up?
Carter? Are we going to get it up? Advisory.
So typically we use the screen for changes. So people are not, so we're helping the clerk and we're helping everybody know what a motion is. So typically we wouldn't do that.
Okay.
You all have access to it electronically. You all have access to the digital. And I would just say that I would request, Mr. Speaker, that you allow laptops and electronic. If you would like it differently, certainly
No.
the four of us
I
here
will
will
give
figure out
one
how to
moment.
pull it up.
If you want this in front of you, which is totally cool, in fact recommended, if you want, take one moment, pull your laptop out, go to the digital packet sent by the clerk.
It's okay.
Do we have a QR code?
It's okay, the QR code was there, or pull it up, Kim's gonna pull it up.
Write the motions up there? So
I will read numbers with the clerk, you're good. People didn't look ahead of time and figure out a way how they were gonna have access to it, that's a bigger issue, but Kim's gonna pull it up. We all get. It's really not.
It's okay, I can find it every time.
I haven't eaten, so I'm a little cranky, sorry y'all.
So here's the total. This is the total. Do you need more than that?
I know, I think that's
You don't need the travel stipends.
I think this is the one you have here.
Yeah, I need to.
It's complete. We're not able to read it.
Today.
Can you lock it, or can you? Let me ask the group, how's everybody being able to see that? Too small? on the two screens? Is it too small for you to read? It's okay if it is, please just raise your hand.
Then you can just do this.
Okay. Nicole needs the purple ones, so we can't
If I need to make
close them.
It's up to you.
Could you just scroll over, because this is locked, right? Could you just scroll over and just show these cells and then the final number at the end? Yep, yeah, just exactly.
Nicole, we're not gonna be looking by section, so we're not gonna be making adjustments by section. So do you need, you know what I mean, can we just go? Can we do that? I can make it bigger, but you need the stipulations too, Chase?
You don't have it on your own laptop?
Me? I've got everything up here.
Yeah, okay,
This
good,
is
so
for
you can see
folks
it.
out there, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
they probably just need to see the,
the total. I
unless
think,
there's a specific question.
We're good. If there's a specific question, Supervisor has it pulled up, I have it pulled up, and I have all the numbers here.
or other people have.
Yeah, we all have it pulled up. So if you have a specific question, and now you all have it pulled up. So if you have a question, you can look in there as well. With that, we're gonna move right into things.
Okay. Thank you.
What do you mean?
Who's is that pulled up on?
It's on this computer.
Sorry, one moment, folks. Would you look at that? No, that's not it. Look at, I don't have any days. I don't know what, I don't know if it's just on the word or
What's the issue? Right?
Yeah, that's good. Then everyone. Which one you looking at? This one?
Oh, so that's an Excel versus the Google Drive. Look at the Google Drive. That's just like the shareable version. It's better to. For you. This will be fine. It's, they'll, I think, they were looking at the Excel version rather than. The original shares. Do they transfer?
They don't.
In what respect?
They aren't in the same order.
Oh.
It's like the one in the Excel sheet is not in alphabetical order.
Oh.
It's probably an order by org code. Can you just sort
Does it
it?
have all of them? Well, if it, as long as it has all of them.
It should.
I don't know.
Well, you can do it this way, and then they can just find it on there. One short US.
Okay,
It's
so
okay.
do we have org codes in here?
No, I think there's some.
No, we're good.
Okay.
Okie dokie. I believe we are ready to go. Is everyone feeling good? Thank you for bearing with us. Everyone feeling good? I'll judge by thumbs. Thumbs up. Good. All right, let's move. Starting with Accounting Society with a total allocation request of $3,150 and a SUFAC recommendation of $840. Any discussion? Going once, going twice. See none. Wonderful. On to Association for Computing Machinery with a total allocation request of $2,671 and a SUFAC recommendation of $2,171. Any discussion? Going once, going twice. Seeing none, on to Active Minds with a total request of $745 and a SUFAC recommendation of $745. Any discussion? Going once, going twice. Seeing none, on to Alloy with a request of $2,000 and a recommendation of $2,000. Discussion? Once, twice, none. American Choral Directors Association with a request of $200 and a recommendation of $200. Any discussion? Once, twice, none. On to American String Teachers Association with a request of $10,805.19 and a recommendation of $5,379. Any discussion? Once, twice.
Yeah, what, I apologize, I do not have my laptop, but what does that say in the far right column?
Us for remote trip campus wide.
Okay, yeah, so what does that mean exactly? Like,
Yeah, that's a great question. Mind if I jump in?
Go for it.
Great. This is a stipulation, so SUFAC has the opportunity to place stipulations on the dollar amount, which essentially means, if this, then that type deal. So essentially, their funding would not be given out or dispersed until after the stipulation has been met. So in this particular situation, we felt that this trip really needed a priority place on campus-wide promotion. All trips funded by SUFAC are supposed to be advertised campus-wide per SUFAC policy, but in this specific circumstance, we thought that this trip was a good opportunity and really should have some focus to be promoted campus-wide. So essentially what that would mean for the group is that they would send, Sue would be the person in control of their distribution, essentially. They would just send them like some form of marketing that they did that proves that they actually advertised it campus-wide. And then the stipulation will be met and they'll get the money. So just make sure, it just helps to make sure that groups are following the policy and that we have placed emphasis on certain areas. So, but a stipulation could be anything. It could be that, or it could be, you need to store the stuff on campus if you purchase it with campus money. It could be a lot, or like students have to pick who goes on the trip, stuff like that. It could be anything. So, great question though. That's a really good question.
Sure, Zimmerman, could you talk about why you recommend stipulations occasionally?
I mean, yeah, stipulations are case by case. Honestly, a lot of the time we don't need stipulations. But if something were to come up during a hearing or anything, or we hear about a trip or something that we need to place emphasis on, it's usually just an area that we want to place emphasis. Most of the time, stipulations are just reiterating the guidelines, but making sure they're extremely clear about the way they do it. Or, like if someone wanted to buy a table cover and we allocated them, they said they wanted to buy 3, and they have other things in their supplies, we could stipulate that they can only purchase 1 table cover within their supplies budget, but they might have gotten a bigger supplies budget to go on other things. Because once they have a supplies budget, Sue is not going back and reviewing what they initially asked for and all that other stuff. Sue would simply see they have the money in there and she would most likely go for it. But if she sees a stipulation that says,
Point of clarification, who's Sue?
Sue, I can't pronounce her name.
Havlovic.
Havlovic, she's the financial specialist in SAI. Thank you, that was a great question. She's the one that handles SUE funds and manages the accounts for all student organizations. So anytime student organizations need to spend money, they need to go through SUE in order to purchase or acquire whatever it is they want to spend money on. She's also the one who interprets the stipulations and their allocations and things like that. So it's up to us to be as clear as possible in the stipulation for anybody who were to get any money, basically. So, okay, great question.
Thank you very much, Chair Zimmerman. Do you have any other questions? That was a perfect example of how it works. That was beautiful, folks. We're going to do Aspiring Educators one more time with a request of $650 and a recommendation of $550. Any discussion? Going once? Going twice? Seeing none? On to Association for Supply Chain Management with a request of $6,760 and a recommendation of $3,897. Any discussion? Once? Twice? None? On to Badminton with a request of $495 and a recommendation of $495. Any discussion? Once? Twice? None? On to Bags Club with a request of $1,200 and a recommendation of $1,000. Any discussion? Once? Twice? None? On to Baseball with a request of $5,400 and a recommendation of $5,400. Any discussion? Once? Twice? None? On to Basketball, men's, with a request of $5,400 and a recommendation of $5,400. Any discussion? Once? Twice? None? On to Women's Basketball with a request of $3,608 and a recommendation of $3,608. Any discussion? Once? Twice? None? On to the Black Student Union with a request of $19,250 and a recommendation of $10,525. Any discussion? Once?
What was the factors that played into Black Student Union?
Senator.
The overall allocation or the stipulation or
The stipulation.
the stipulation? Sure. So in their hearing, I remember this one off memory. In their hearing, they requested some funds essentially to cover a DJ for different parties that they wanted to have on campus, and that's great. But in the past, they've charged for those events, and so if SUFAC is going to pay for something like that, it needs to be free for students, specifically with respect to an event like that. And so we essentially said we'll pay for the DJ as long as it's free for students. So basically, they couldn't charge like a cover or a door at that party. It would need to be free. And then if they did charge a cover or a door, they would just need to pay back the money that they spent on the DJ. Like think of it like a loan or like a fundraiser type aspect. So it gave them the flexibility to either have it free or essentially pay the money back once the party was over and they collected the cover or whatever they charged to make profit on that event. Does that sort of answer your question?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Any other discussion? Parliamentarian Patricus?
Are you able to just elaborate on what SUFAC policy is on loans and what that looks like?
Yeah, sure. So loans, I mean, I call it a loan because that's essentially what it is, but really we refer to it in the fundraising mentality in the sense that like if I want to have a bake sale but I have no money, like, and I need to buy the stuff to make the bake sale items and to make the home cooked stuff and stuff like that. So you could essentially request, $500 for a bake sale funding, and you could go out and spend that $500 on the supplies that you need in order to like make the stuff you're gonna sell. But then essentially the expectation is you would then pay that money back with the proceeds of the fundraiser, and you would make the profit difference, right? It's a loan, it's like seed money, basically, it's getting you started, but the expectation is that you pay SUFAC and SUF that money back because all you're doing is collecting profit from it, and SUFAC isn't gonna pay for a profit generating event unless you pay that money back. We're more than happy to help you get set up with that stuff, but the expectation is the money comes back.
Senator Keller?
Presume you don't make profit on that, do you still pay the money back, I'd assume?
Yep.
Wonderful. Any other discussion on BSU? Going once? Going twice? See none. Wonderful. With that, we'll move on to men's bowling with a request of $7,200 and a recommendation of $7,200. Any discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to boxing with a request of $1,250 and a recommendation of $1,250. Senator Carter?
Yeah, my only question is, what do you mean by if found eligible? Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, essentially SUFAC has not made an eligibility decision on this, and this is the recommended allocation that we would allocate to the boxing club if found eligible.
Okay.
So, and this is a notes section as well as stipulations, so some of these are notes and some of these are stipulations. This would fall into the note category.
Is there a timeline on finding eligibility? Is it?
There's not necessarily a timeline. It's to be in compliance with the First Amendment and different state statutes. So we would work with groups in order to sort of facilitate that conversation.
Is there a codification of their eligibility before they begin funding? I assume?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Senator Easter?
Alright, maybe you could explain this like on 5, or like maybe like explain like the requirements for being eligible. Like what does it exactly mean for like, what makes something eligible, what makes another organization not eligible?
Yeah, I mean, essentially we would review state statutes 36-12. However, we're not necessarily determining eligibility in some situations, and so it's reviewing the state statutes and reviewing the First Amendment and making sure that we align within those and that we align with them in different campus policies. So it's basically policy.
Yeah.
That makes a lot more sense, thank you.
Yeah. And you can read those policies if you want. They're all public, obviously, so feel free to have a good read.
Wonderful. Any other discussion? On boxing. Once? Twice? Seeing none, on to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, starting with a request of $302 and a recommendation of $302. Any discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to Circle K International with a request of $2,100 and a recommendation of $1,400. Any discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to Club Sports General, starting with a request of $12,000 and a recommendation of $12,000. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to the Coalition Against Sexual and Interpersonal Violence, otherwise known as CASIV. Request of $1,000 and a recommendation of $800. Any discussion? Once? Twice? None on the Coffee Lovers Club. Requested $595 and recommended $575. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to the College Democrats, the UW College Democrats. Requested $1,800, recommended $1,400. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On the Criminal Justice Organization, requested $0, recommended $170. Discussion? Senator Schmidt?
I just kind of wanted some elaboration.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you asked that question. That means everybody's paying attention. Their math was wrong on their application. They put numbers in incorrect boxes. And so during their hearing, we essentially determined that this was the intended number that they wanted to do. But officially, they requested $0 because on their application, that's what it came through to be. And so in their hearing, we determined that this was the accurate amount. And then we went through guidelines and made our recommendation as such. So sometimes the math is not always right when we receive the things, and so that's why we have the hearings, to be like, are you sure you're actually requesting $0? So, yeah, that's a great question.
Quick question. Chair Zimmerman. If I, say next year, wanted to make sure my math was right, are there resources available to me before I have to send this in to make sure that all my math is right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of resources. So we have two very wonderful budget interns that work year-round on different SUFAC and SUF and UC related items, and they are available heavily throughout that period of time via Navigate for student and student organizations to essentially make appointments with them and say, hey, I have literally no idea what I'm doing in this application. Can you please help me? And they'll sit with you and be like, how much money do you need? What do you want to do? Let's do this. And then they'll help structure and craft your application with you, not for you. And then essentially you'll submit it and you've got a helping hand all the way through. SAI helps a lot of folks do that. And that can all be found under the SUFAC helpful resources stuff on Connect. Great question.
Wonderful. Any other discussion? Going once? Going twice? Seeing none, on to crew with a request of $7,000 and a SUFAC recommendation of $5,000. Any discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to cycling with a request of $1,350 and a recommendation of $1,350. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to Data Analytics Club with a request of $400 and a recommendation of $400. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to Disc Golf with a request of $1,350 and a recommendation of $1,350. Any discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to Ducks Unlimited with a request of $0 and a recommendation of $0. Question, why is that on there?
Because they put in revenue. So they submitted a SUFAC application and they denoted that money was going to be going in, but they also had expenses. So when you submit a SUFAC application, you report your projected expenses and you report your projected revenue, and sometimes those balance out and then you're at a zero, but you're still initially asking for SUF dollars. And so in this particular situation, the math works out to zero, but they will be using SUF funds in the interim in order to pay for things, and then they reimburse it with.
They don't.
What they reimburse with revenue? Oh, I'm never wrong, but.
Ducks Unlimited is completely philanthropic. They raise
Oh,
funds
yes,
for
that's-
Ducks Unlimited, state and
every other
national, and they donate it. So they don't use any funds because that would be similar to fundraising.
Yes.
They're part of the club
Very
sports
insufficient.
family. I'm sorry, I'm not,
No, you're fine. Every other group does it.
yes.
Sounds good.
You're right about every group except for, yeah.
Parliamentary Treats?
I believe they were included because they were a club sport, and then every club sport is on here.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's another,
That's correct.
yes. Club Sports submits a package. They are administrated a little bit differently than the traditional student org in the sense that they have a lot more oversight in some respects. And so their whole department comes together and essentially submits one proposal for like 37 different groups. And so they're naturally one of the 37, and they still get talked to. Great question.
Thank you very much.
Great.
On to Dungeons and Dragons Club with a request of $760 and a recommendation of $760. Any discussion? Once? Twice? None? On to Enactus, also known as SIC, with a request of $13,850 and a recommendation of $11,850. Discussion? Once? Twice? None? On to Esports with a request of $608 and a recommendation of $608. Discussion? Once? twice, none. On to Evolve Whitewater with a request of $1,430 and a recommendation of $1,038. Any discussion? Once?
Why were they found? I'm
Senator
sorry,
Dorsey?
clarification. Why were they found if found eligible?
It's just a budget note, that just essentially says that, you know, their, eligibility is not, we've not made a decision. There's no conclusive, so it's just basically saying that there has not been a decision made. So, but we still include their request, because we went through their request and did it with guidelines, and we can project to have that expense. We just haven't made an eligibility decision at this time. So,
Why is that?
why is that? We're just working with, what?
So it's pending.
It's pending,
It's really pending, right? There's more information that's needed for it to be cleared. It's a pending decision.
So we're
It's
including it
totally
in the
normal.
number, that way people know the absolute maximum that could be requested from students in terms of like the total allocation. So it's a little like kind of hairy when you talk about that sort of stuff, so it's weird. That's a good question though. Did I sort of answer it to some extent?
To some extent.
To some extent, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Rodriguez?
Parliamentarian Patrice.
Correct me if I'm wrong again, but I believe that to get this in front of the Senate at a reasonable time, with some groups needing more information to determine eligibility, it was determined that SUFAC will determine eligibility at a later date, so then the budget can get in front of everyone today, and then at a later point when that information is gathered, it can be then reevaluated for eligibility.
I mean, essentially it's pending, is the answer. Jan had a great response to that. But yeah, we have a timeline. That's why you're seeing this now. It needs to get in front of the chancellor next week, and it needs to move forward in the budgetary process. So
Any other discussion on any of that? Once? Twice? None. On to fencing with a request of $492 and a recommendation of $492. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to Financial Management Association with a request of $9,566.50 and a recommendation of $7,067. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to Fishing with a request of $864 and a recommendation of $864. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to Fitwell with a request of $216 and a recommendation of $216. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to the forensics team. Total request of $10,629 and a recommendation of $10,629. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to gamed with a request of $1,440.48 and a recommendation of $1,351. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to Gaming Group of Whitewater, also known as Board Game Club, with a request of $225 and a recommendation of $225. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to Garden Club with a total request of $2,898.31 and a recommendation of $1,502. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to GeoEnvy with a request of $4,040 and a recommendation of $3,040. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to Golf with a request of $1,125 and a recommendation of $1,025. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to Hawk Cinema with a request of $4,425 and a recommendation of $4,425. Discussion? Once? Twice? On to Ignite Impact with a request of $750 and a recommendation of $750. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to Impact with a request of $6,375 and a recommendation of $5,835. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to International Students Association with a request of $2,114 and a recommendation of $2,114. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to InterVarsity Christian Fellowship with a request of $3,100 and a recommendation of $3,100. Discussion? Once, twice, none. On to ISAC Cybersecurity Club, ISACA Cybersecurity Club, with a request of $2,815.40 and a recommendation of $3,676. Discussion? Once, twice. Senator West?
Oh, man. What's the reasoning behind them doing more than they're requesting?
Yeah, I'm gonna track down the answer to that, because there are 115 of these, but I can tell you, I think the number was wrong in their application, the number was wrong.
I think these are the adjusted numbers. Actually, this is why. It's that minus the 900.
Yeah, their revenue wasn't too good. Oh yeah, so basically, I mean honestly, their math is wrong. That's essentially the answer to the question. They didn't subtract revenue differences, and then when asked, we always ask about revenue in hearings because sometimes people put money in there and they don't necessarily realize that we expect that money. Like if you put in revenue, that's money that's coming into our SUFAC account. And so in this particular situation, they had $900 of revenue in there, and that got them to the $2,850. But in this situation, that revenue would not be projected, and so that's why the number is a little bit higher. I'll put it back. Sorry.
If it helps, the original request was $3,715.40. And then once you subtract the $900, it ended up there.
So basically, math that didn't necessarily math, and then we caught it, but they denoted that they needed a higher level of funding than what the math actually worked out to be. And so that's why their number is higher in the end, because they, in their hearing, told us that, oh, well, shoot, we actually need more money than that in that situation. So that's why these can get a little messy. Did I answer whoever's question that was?
Yep, thank you.
Sweet.
Wonderful. Any other discussion? I have a question. It seems as though everything in the recommended column does not have a cent.
Yeah, great question. We round up.
What the requests do. Could you explain it?
We round up.
Perfect. On to Jazz Education Network,
Request of the budget office.
with a total request of $8,754 and a recommendation of $7,200. Discussion?
I just jumped in. Just discussion on the last question. A good point was made. We round up at the advisement and request of the budget office just to make their lives much easier when entering in 115 different line items, plus the subcategories of every single travel, expense, all this other stuff. And if we round up, it makes their lives infinitely easier. And it's really not that much. So it reduces it. Great question.
Senator Keller?
Sorry.
Just, do we have an estimate on what that costs students? I assume it's not much, I just wonder.
I mean, to be completely honest, when you put in a request, you put in the cents because you're doing like a mileage calculation or something. The odds of the student actually meeting down to that cent or that number being correct in the original equation are extremely low. So I would say this doesn't cost anything to students. In fact, it probably gives more money out and allows there to be a little more room for error in those individual student budgets.
I kind of meant that in like the opposite way, not like the student orgs, but like the student dollars.
I could not give you a number estimate on that, but I would imagine it would be extremely low. So,
What's extremely low?
under $10.
Thank you. Parliamentarian for the treat. Okay. Any other discussion? Once? Twice, I'm gonna go back into Jazz Education Network with a request of $8,754 and a recommendation of $7,200. Discussion? Once, twice, none. On to Karate/Warhawk Martial Arts with a request of $929 and a recommendation of $929. On to Men's Lacrosse with a request of $2,500 $2,593 and a recommendation of $2,593. Discussion, once, twice, on to women's lacrosse with a request of $1,297 and a recommendation of $1,297. Discussion, once, twice, on to Latinos Unidos with a request of $13,800 and a recommendation of $9,850. Discussion, Senator Estro.
Why did they get less?
Why did LU get less?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they had multiple trips. I can get an answer very shortly. But basically, as I talked about at the beginning, at that first meeting, if there's multiple trips, we normally bump them down to one trip unless the mission of their organization requires them to go on that trip. And so I think in this particular situation, they got bumped down a trip. But I can find out an answer very shortly. Actually, I can just look right here. Yep, we bumped them down a trip, and
They also had t-shirt sales in there.
yes, we reallocated their supplies. So SUFAC does not pay for member t-shirts. That's what you could charge dues for to pay for. SUFAC isn't going to pay for a t-shirt that only benefits one student on campus, so it's not necessarily a group benefit, and so that's why we would pay for that. So there's a large portion in there that was t-shirts and the trip. Mainly the trip is what brought them down. Effectively, 2,000. Good question.
Any other discussion? Once, twice, none. On to Law Society with a request of $440 and a recommendation of $396. Discussion, Senator Carter.
Yeah, why is their allocation highlighted?
Yeah, so the two groups that are highlighted turned in their allocations late,
Oh, okay.
which we had to put in consideration when doing their allocation.
Well, how does that affect consideration?
So we don't necessarily consider it in terms of how we analyze their request. Simply, we don't even tell the committee that that was a late submission until after we've already made an allocation recommendation, and then we dock them 10% from turning it in.
Keeping in mind that every group that was sent an allocation or was sent to give an allocation was sent at least 2 weeks in advance with an email a week leading, every day, a week leading up to the application process.
After you probably got that.
Yeah.
Right. On Connect to emails, etc.
Is that clear? Is there any other questions?
Discussion? Once, twice, none. On to laws. On to Law Society with a request.
No.
We just did laws.
Perfect, thank you. On to Leaders Igniting Transformation with a request of $850 and a recommendation of $540. Discussion? Once, twice, none. On to Men's Ultimate Frisbee as a duplicate, requested $0, recommended $0. Discussion? Once, twice, none. On to Model UN with a request of $7,612 and a recommendation of $2,370. Any discussion? Senator Schmidt?
I was just curious about why there's such a huge gap between what they requested and what they're recommending.
Yeah.
Because that's like a $5,000 gap.
I kind of want to do it. Okay, so when Model UN came in, they explained to us that their allocation that they sent in was wrong. They originally sent in 1 or 2 trips. One trip, and then they actually bumped it up to 2 trips, or 3 trips, I'm sorry. They added 2 extra trips. And then going back with what we said for LU, we really cut it down to 1 trip, plus some other things, and I believe and they took out their.
So basically, this request was all travel. We learned in the hearing that what was submitted was incorrect, and so we were then made aware of 2 additional trips on top of the one that was in the request, one of which was an abroad trip, and there were also passport fees included, and all of which we don't necessarily cover with SUF funds, especially the passport fees. And so the number just reflects after guidelines and after everything else that we did to trim every other group down. So this just looks more dramatic because they literally only requested trips. So, and we're only gonna fund 1 trip unless absolutely necessary to fund 1.
Okay.
Good question though.
Sure, everyone, I have a question for some clarification.
Sure.
When it comes to funding of trips, you've mentioned we don't fund, we generally try to fund 1 trip. You said we try not to fund the same trip twice. Can you clarify what you mean in that? Just in regards to funding on trips, I think there's a lot of organizations here.
Yeah.
got some funding cut through
Yeah.
trips. Can you tell us a little bit about
Yeah, I mean, everybody wants to travel. That's great. It's the most expensive thing in anybody's budget, aside from like a service, which may be catering or printing costs for a book that the organization produces, or a guest speaker that's exorbitant. And so, in order to make the fee sustainable and to make it fair to all students and to really benefit what it's supposed to be doing, we don't feel as though every single trip should be funded, and that sort of incentivizes the organization to fundraise and find alternative ways to work towards the trip. In rare circumstances, we do fund multiple trips, and that may be like competing or competitive organizations that simply cannot compete on this campus. Like their organization requires them to get out there and to do that, and so we'll assist with that. However, 9 times out of 10, most of those organizations do a significant level of fundraising in parallel with what we would provide. It's also worth noting that we expect all organizations to contribute to some level of the trip cost. We do not pay for 100% of anybody's trip. We pay for a level of which, and then essentially they're required to fundraise the rest to make it. It allows them to put some skin in the game, and just basically make sure it's not all on the university to pay for that, or really your pockets. Because this request would be $130,000 more than it is if we funded every single trip. And that makes it a lot more expensive for you in terms of a per fee basis. So this just keeps it sustainable and fair to all the groups that are requesting. And then in certain situations as well, we tried to prioritize funding registration for conferences, hotel fees, and then airfare or mileage. And so basically we cover the 3 main things in most situations of at least one trip. That way that they have the opportunity to get some of those big things out of the way. And also SUF and all the other, SAI and all the campus groups work tirelessly to make sure that you're going on a safe trip. And so by us covering those items, it then requires you to go through our campus for those trips, and that makes sure that you get a safe hotel room. You make sure your flights are insured. You make sure that your rent-a-car is not from a bad rent-a-car place. Like anything just to protect you. And so it's a lot of different reasons. Looks like you have that.
I would say we reduce based on guidelines too. So a lot of travel is requested over what the guidelines are. So sometimes there's a significant reduction for that.
Yeah, that's a great point. I honestly could explain that too, just one sec. Is that essentially we have the guidelines, they're in the back of your packet right after the executive summary and memo. I mentioned them for the past 2 weeks basically, one by paper and one the other week. But that's essentially how we start our level of cutting, is if it's outside of the guidelines, then we're automatically going to reduce it by that amount. So if you say you want a round trip to Paris, and that's going to cost $1,000. Well, we only fund trips up to $300 or whatever the number is that says in the guidelines. So automatically, we can reduce $700 of that request to get it in line with the guidelines. And those guidelines are based on averages for flights, domestic and foreign, averages on gas mileage for rent-a-cars. It's average on mileage reimbursement from system policy. There's a lot of math and work that gets put in there, and honestly, most of these guidelines are very similar from year to year. We just adjust for the market, and we adjust for what we believe to be fair and equitable for everybody on campus. So, and those are shared with the speaker at the beginning of the semester once they're created, and they're diligently worked on the SUFAC leadership and the entire SUFAC committee. Great question. I just yapped for a while.
Good. That was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Parliamentary Patrice.
Yeah, if a group requests multiple trips, how does SUFAC pick which trip?
Yeah, good question.
We basically determine it based on the organization's, how would you say, organization's?
Well, mission, but then also we ask everybody what their priority is in the hearing.
Right.
So if you have 4 trips on your thing, we say, okay, this is a great request, big budget request. We got a lot of other groups to consider. What is the most important thing in your budget that when we're going through allocations and we're going through revisions, what is like the most important thing in here that we should not touch? If we have to make a change, what is something we should leave? And so that's how we prioritize things. Great
And
question.
sometimes that wouldn't even be travel. Sometimes they would prioritize supplies over travel or services over supplies, etc.
Yeah, happens a lot actually. Great question.
Any other discussion on Model UN? Going once? Going twice? Seeing none. On to M WTG of Whitewater with a request of $50 and a recommendation of $50. Discussion, once, twice, none. On to the Muslim Student Association with a request of $2,200 and a recommendation of $1,500. Discussion, once, twice, none. On to NACA, or Native American Cultural Awareness Association, with a request of $3,400 and a recommendation of $3,060. Discussion, once, twice, none. On to National Association for Music Education, with a request of $3,360 and a recommendation of $1,000. Discussion, once, twice, none. On to Officials Association, with a request of $691 and a recommendation of $691. Discussion, once, twice, none. On to Outdoor Adventure Club, with a request of $648 and a recommendation of $1. Discussion. Senator Rushing.
That's quite the price change. To go all the way down to $1.
Why, thank you for asking. I'm glad you caught that. So the Outdoor Adventure Club, most of their requests was filled with one-time expenditures, what we would call a one-time expenditure. So to be specific, they asked for camping supplies like tents and different cover-ups things and outerwear and things like that. And so that'd be a one-time expense. And so it doesn't fit within an allocation request. So like allocations are reoccurring yearly expenses. In this case, it's not a reoccurring expense. Once you get a tent, you can keep that tent. And so we simply push them to go towards the contingency fund, which is another aspect that they can require funding. And if they go towards the contingency fund and actually submit a contingency request, they could get that equipment this year rather than next fiscal year. So if anything, it works out better for them in the sense that they could get that money this year and purchase the supplies this year rather than having to wait till their allocation. Why we allocated them $1, you're probably curious about. This is sort of a past practice. We like to allocate them a level of funding to ensure that they can be considered, to ensure that they have the accounting, board code, everything stays current and up to date. There needs to be money in these situations in order to keep them alive. And so it's a small thing to keep the account open. It's simply like an accounting placeholder type deal, and it's $1. So, great question.
Any other discussion? Senator Carter.
Why is it duplicated, may I?
This is a club sport, so club sports submits their stuff as a package. Not all club sports necessarily are like the traditional sports that you would think. So the Outdoor Adventure Club, they submitted a request with the package, and then their leadership accidentally submitted a request separately prior to their meeting with club sports admin people. So essentially there was two things. One of them was a duplicate, so we just canceled it out, and we went with the package of traditional club sport. It's the same number, we just cross it out. So it gets aligned because there was 2 applications, but we're not gonna find it twice.
There were 3 club sports in total. That's the second one. You'll see one more shortly.
Awesome. Any other discussion on Outdoor Adventure Club? Going once? Going twice? Seeing none, on to Outdoor Adventure Club duplicate with a request of $0 and a recommendation of $0. Discussion. Seeing none, we'll move on to Peace with a request of $5,800 and a recommendation of $5,000. Discussion. Once, twice, none. On to Phi Sigma Epsilon Beta Gamma chapter with a request of $16,110.50 and a recommendation of $12,000. Discussion. Senator Houston.
Yeah, so from what I've heard, like a lot of the Greek organizations aren't funded by SUPAC, so I wonder if Pi Sigma Epsilon will be the exception or if it's just like the name.
Great question. That's basically just the name. It's an honor society, so that'd be an academic fraternity or sorority. We do not fund social fraternities or sororities. So that's the difference you're looking for there. And so in that particular situation, that's where that's at.
And it's actually not just an honor society, because that also would be ineligible because it limits based on GPA or major. It's open to all students interested in sales.
They simply use the Greek letters to sort of identify themselves.
So Greek letter organization or fraternity, sorority, and society are social Greek letter organizations.
A social Greek chapter is not funded by SUPAC. That's correct.
Senator Heath Houston, that was a wonderful question. I'm really glad you caught that. On to Pickleball with a request of $7,855 and a recommendation of $7,855. Discussion, once, twice, none. On to professional writing core with a request of $1,200 and a recommendation of $650. Discussion, once, twice, none. On to PRSSA with a request of $5,475 and a recommendation of $4,403. Discussion, once, twice, none. On to Rare Afflictions Club with a request of $400 and a recommendation of $0. Can I know why?
Sure. Basically, they had requested all money for fundraising, and this is also their first time ever submitting a request. And so in this particular situation, to protect the organization, since they have no other requests, we recommended a funding level of 0 and basically said if you want to fundraise, use that money to go out and do the fundraising. And this was also, I think, more on the philanthropic end of things, in the sense that like they were going to be creating something to give away, which SUFEC doesn't exactly fund for. And so they were recommended an allocation of 0 because, Nick, you have something else to add?
They were asking for money for a bake sale, and then to sell the products, which is a fundraiser, which they would have to pay back.
Yes. So
And
that was the
then-
first one.
rather than giving them away.
Basically, if their bake sale didn't go well, they were going to be on the hook for the $400 or whatever event they were going to be doing. And so it's better to just put that on a new organization that has done that, and allow them to do that sort of on their own without being like, okay, well, your first year in existence, you now owe SUFAC $400 because this didn't go well. And so sort of putting them in that situation. And
Can you define what you mean by owe SUFAC $400? Break that
it's a
down.
fundraiser thing.
Yep.
So essentially, if you don't make enough money to cover the amount of money that you spent from your SUF account, you still need to owe that money back, like a loan. Question.
Is that a rule for all new clubs, or how you decide which new clubs get that funding and which new clubs don't get the fundraising money?
It's really for all clubs if they want a certain amount for fundraising or that loan. But for this group, because they're new and they have nothing in their budget, it wouldn't really benefit them if it wouldn't really benefit them if we gave them the money, they're not able to pay it back, and then for the next few years they have to pay back that $400. So it's really making sure that they don't go in the hole and owe us $400. But any group can ask for a loan amount. It just we have to look at the budget to see if they are eligible to maybe pay it back.
And then-
revenue.
Sorry, no, you're fine. I'll just clarify with respect to the specific one, sort of furthering my point. I have it right here, supplies for fundraisers that would be donated to related charities. So essentially, that's a philanthropic effort. They're going to be giving that away. So we're not going to necessarily say that.
Senator Conley?
So just to clarify, SUFAC would support organizations to fundraise, and they would give a loan, in theory, to fundraise for profit. They wouldn't give a loan
To fundraise for a philanthropic effort.
Right.
Can I ask why is that?
Does that benefit necessarily the UW campus and those like that organization? There are other alternatives and great grant opportunities on campus to acquire funding for those particular projects that are not bound by the guidelines of SUFAC. And so yes, in concept, but also no in concept. It would depend highly on what the level of what they're going to give away, and really and truly, we're not going to pay to give things away.
It would also be raising the student fee versus coming to contingency next fall and saying, hey, we'd like to do this and we need some help getting some in advance in order to be able to make this happen. Can contingency help us? Which would not raise the student fee and would put money that's already in our accounts up instead. So we would be able to work with them in creating a plan and supporting them through that process more.
And it would still be under the expectation that they paid that money.
Right, that makes sense, but then with that first organization that was fundraising, why do we raise the student fee for the fundraising and not just go through the contingency?
It doesn't actually raise the student fee because we put their revenue balances it out. We just specifically said that this needs to happen. So like I said earlier about stipulations, how they're accentuating the policy, essentially, or we're raising awareness to an area, that particular group denoted that a lot of what they would be doing is fundraising. And so we added the stipulation to just clarify the fundraising policy and put that in there. But they have revenue, so technically it offsets. But in this situation, we're not providing the revenue number to balance that out. It's a little confusing. I'd be more than happy to write it on paper for you to have it make sense, but.
I'd also love to make the note that we found this group eligible and we think they're here on campus for a really good cause. We just want them to get a good head start and not put them in debt on their first year of being SUPEC funded. So it's not that we found any hate towards the club or we don't think they are SUPEC eligible. It's just simply, we want to help them for the next coming years.
I would also add that for those of you who are in the room who are going through this process for the first time, it's an extreme, like you're gonna really feel what the guidelines and their implications are as you go through the process.
Yeah.
What that means is if you leave this room with questions about why the guidelines are the way they are, the SUPEC leadership team is a wonderful resource. Senate leadership is a great resource. Our advisors and plenty of folks over at SAI are wonderful resources as to why the guidelines are written the way they are. And if you think those guidelines are silly, you should go say that to somebody. So that's not really the discussion we're having today. I would invite you to continue asking those questions. It's a super educational moment. It has very little to do with Rare Afflictions Club in kind of the practice of what we're doing here today. Does that make sense to everybody? Perfect. On to Real Estate Club with a request of, yeah, we just did discussion on that. Okay, Rare Afflictions. Real Estate Club with a request of $13,117.61 and a recommendation of $7,912. Discussion, once, twice, none. On to Recreation Sports Spirit Program with a request of $2,400 and a recommendation of $2,400. Discussion, once, twice, none. On to Recreation, that was for uniform replacements, with onto Recreation Sports Spirit Program with a request of $8,050 and a recommendation of $8,050. I get a little info on what just happened.
There's a Spirit program, board code requesting department type deals. They serve two different functions. One of them is for the Spirit program, for the different groups that are associated with that, for travel and for other things that they may need. And then the other item in there is for their uniform replacement fund. So basically, it's an annual deposit into their replacement fund that essentially is like a fund that allows them to replace uniforms. So I'm not going to overcomplicate it.
They have about 10 teams. They do a lot of fundraising. They deposit their fundraising, but they also ask for a contribution annually of $2,400 to help replace about a set of uniforms a year. So they rotate through.
So just to be clear, that would be one of their 10
Yes.
sets
10
of
teams.
uniforms.
Not sets. So
Okay.
there's cheer for each season.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
There's cheer, right? There's basketball.
Thank
There's
you.
2 basketball teams. There's 2 football teams
Gotcha.
for cheer. There's spirit. There's mascot. There's dance. There's the Warlettes. They're
There's a
all
lot
in
of
there.
things.
Okay. Thank you. On to men's rugby with a request of $5,878 and a recommendation of $5,878. Discussion, once, twice, none. On to women's rugby with a request of $1,800 and a recommendation of $1,800. Discussion, once, twice, none. On to running club, running, with a request of $500 and a recommendation of $500. Discussion, once, twice, none. On to saxophone club with a request of $5,240 and a recommendation of $4,600. Discussion, once, twice, none. On to 7 fashion modeling troupe with a request of $5,181 and a recommendation of $3,022. Discussion, once, twice, none. On to ski and snowboard with a request of $450 and a recommendation of $450. Discussion, once, twice, none. On to men's soccer with a request of $2,700 and a recommendation of $2,700. Discussion, once, twice, none. On to women's soccer with a request of $1,800 and a recommendation of $1,800. Discussion, once, twice, none. On to social work student organization with a request of $5,716 with a recommendation of $3,421. Discussion, once, twice, none. On to Society for Human Resource Management with a request of $3,495 and a recommendation of $3,495. Discussion, once, twice, none. On to softball with a request of $3,600 and a recommendation of $3,600. Discussion, once, twice, None. On to Southeast Asian Organization with a request of $4,950 and a recommendation of $1,890. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to Spanish Club with a request of $384.48 and a recommendation of $385. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to Student Activities and Involvement with a request of $1 and a recommendation of $1. Discussion?
Is there a question?
Going once?
Great.
Going twice? I'll do it. Sure, what's up?
Sorry, that was like disgusting when I just. This is the concert fund. So this is a fund that's managed by Student Activities and Involvement. It's got a lot of history that goes along with it. But essentially, there used to be a big concert or event that would happen at the beginning of the year, or in other situations, or I don't really know. I wasn't around when this happened. But essentially, the fund itself still exists. I would love to defer to somebody else to explain this.
Advise Bill.
We, because of the cost of concerts, because of the limitations that we have with facilities, we embraced an every other year model for the concert fund. And the first concert that we had made some serious cash. So that fund has kind of carried us forward through the evolution and changing interests of students. So it went from every other year to it went to a welcome back in September. Then it went to a series of smaller concerts that paired with athletic events. And now it is serving as a way to bring what I would say low to middle range folks every couple of years. And because we don't want to charge all of you $150,000 to have a concert. So there's the abbreviated version.
If you would like to hear more history about that, please pepper one of them. This is not now, though, because that's not necessarily pertinent to this entire.
Similar to the Uniform Replacement Fund, there is money in there that has a plan, and this is just to maintain their presence on the list without asking for any additional.
And I can only assume that if there's anything we see like this in the future, it's probably a pretty similar explanation. With that said, on to Student Activities and Involvement 88 Fund with a request of $1 and a recommendation of $1. Discussion?
I should jump in real quick, just because this is a cool fund, and I want to just take a second to highlight it. Essentially, the Student Activities Involvement maintains another fund, surprise, but this one supports essentially allowing and making sure that student organizations who may not have prepared for an ADA accessible need for an event or
Point of clarification, ADA?
Americans with Disability Act.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to butcher which words went where. But essentially, this allows student orgs to come to the ADA fund and say, hey, we have a student that requires an accommodation. We still want to put on this request. Could you help us with the funding needed in order to allow that student to experience the same experience as everybody else? And they could come to this fund, and they could get the money from Student Activities Involvement. I just think it's really cool, and that's awesome that we have that. So I wanted to take a second to say that. And it follows the same policy that the other one does. So, sorry.
Any other discussion? Parliamentarian Chicks?
I want to take advantage of that, really not that.
Kim, or anybody in SAI.
You could email involvement@uww.edu, or a student with a disability could contact their case rep over in the Center for Students with Disabilities. Either way, we work together to maintain that and create that accommodation.
That's awesome. Your time is now yours.
Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to Student Math Association with a request of $240 and a recommendation of $240. On to Student National Association for Teachers of Singing with a request of $1,295 and a recommendation of $905. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to Student Research Organization with a request of $21,000 and a recommendation of $0. Discussion? Senator Gross?
Why is that? Why is there $0?
It's a great question. This is a big space gap. So I can answer this question. I don't really need to necessarily do too much, but essentially, in their hearing, they denoted that the students who attend this conference are a credit, or it's not necessarily. There's a credit-bearing aspect of this conference that was denoted during their hearing and in their application. And per SUFAC guidelines and policy, we do not fund any credit-bearing activity. So essentially, it's a great request. It's just this is not the right group. to come to with that particular request, as we don't fund credit bearing activity. Good question. Other questions?
Okay, so say they were to have gotten that funding, I noticed that that number is like 21,000 is the greatest amount requested. Do you guys have a maximum number that you guys are able to request, or that they're able to request, or is it case by case?
Case by case. We don't treat any group, like we're not gonna say you can only request this much, because an organization could have a valid reason to request a certain amount, and we're not saying you can only request, this much. So we don't wanna put any restrictions on that, because everyone's individualistic in that mentality.
Wonderful.
Great question.
Senator Smith?
Could you elaborate on like the credit bearing? I'm not exactly sure what you mean.
Yeah, so basically, if you attend a course and the requirement, like if you're in a class and the requirement to go on a trip or an excursion or to do anything that SUFAC would fund, and you're required to be in that class in order to touch that money in any way, shape, or form, whether it's paying for your hotel room or any situation, that'd be a credit-bearing activity, and so we will not fund that activity. So like if you wanted to go sledding, but you needed to be in a sledding course to go on the sledding trip, we're not gonna fund the sledding trip because you require them to be in a course. So they're already earning credit for it.
And there are already fees associated with the course that earns credit, like if you pay tuition.
So basically trying to avoid double dipping.
Wonderful. On to,
Good question.
on to Students Allied for Green Earth, other known as SAGE, with a request of $6,120 and a recommendation of $2,320. Any discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to Students Helping in Education, also known as SHINE, with a request of $350 and a recommendation of $350. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to Super Smash Bros. Club with a request of $1,590 and a recommendation of $1,229. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to Tabletop Club with a request of $200 and a recommendation of $200. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to Tennis with a request of $1,575 and a recommendation of $1,575. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to the Muse with a request of $12,112.48 and a recommendation of $10,000.72. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to Tifu Cultural Ensemble with a request of $2,500 and a recommendation of $825. Discussion? Twice? None. On to Turning Point USA with a request of $1,398 and a recommendation of $840. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to Men's Ultimate Frisbee with a request of $2,700 and a recommendation of $2,700. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to UW Empower with a request of $400 and a recommendation of $250. Discussion? Going once? Going twice? Seeing none. On to UW ASL Club with a request of $400 and a recommendation of $320. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to UW Beekeepers Club with a request of $7,515 and a recommendation of $1,080. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to UW Collegiate DECA with a request of $17,700 and a recommendation of $15,313. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to UW Dance Company with a request of $550 and a recommendation of $550. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to UW Flute Club with a request of $7,592 and a recommendation of $6,230. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to UW Psychology Club with a request of $1,000 and a recommendation of $762. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to UW ROTC with a request of $4,000 and a recommendation of $1,500. Chair Zimmerman, could you tell me a little bit about what's going on here?
Essentially, it's multiple trips and then credit-bearing activity, and restriction of who can go on the trips. And so we docked down the number accordingly, in line with the guidelines that we've used for every other thing throughout the rest. And we just added essentially that the budget can only be used for events of travel that are open to all students and do not restrict based on military status or any protected status. So basically, you can't say that you need to be an enlisted service person in order to attend a trip. So that's essentially what that
And from the information I have, not only enlisted, but also in the ROTC credit-bearing classes that are associated, even if they're not yet on contract.
Yeah, for some of the trips. And so we still funded a level of trips, but that would be made accessible to all campus students.
Trips plural?
One trip.
They can split it up into 18 trips if they want to, but
Yeah.
we only really funded for one. And I think that's part of it, is that they put zero revenue in as well. They had no intention of paying any portion of the trips.
Any other discussion? Going once? Going twice? Seeing none, on to UW Trumpet Club with a request of $7,000 and a recommendation of $1,819. Discussion? Going once? Going twice? Seeing none, on to men's volleyball with a request of $2,250 and a recommendation of $2,250. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to women's volleyball with a request of $1,720 and a recommendation of $1,720. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to Warhawk Barbell Club with a request of $1,800 and a recommendation of $1,800. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to water polo with a request of $1,031 and a recommendation of $1,031. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to what the craft with a request of $555 and a recommendation of $435. Discussion? Once? Twice? None. On to Whitewater Student Government with a request of $33,112 and a recommendation of $33,112. Chase, why is that so large?
Gee, that's the biggest request in this entire budget. And essentially that pays for your directors and your speaker and your clerks' stipends that they earn throughout that situation and their terms on the student government. And this also pays for some level of supplies, and they do bring in revenue from the housing fair and other various activities, and this also funds some level of the It's On Us event that is a campus event. So it is rather large, but you are essentially paying the folks in the room.
You guys are expensive.
Well worth it.
Well worth it.
So pretty big.
So yeah, so
Discussion?
it is the biggest one in this entire thing.
Any other discussions? Going once. Going twice. See none. On to Wisconsin
Consortium.
Consortium. Thank you.
Yes.
With a request of $14,812 and a recommendation of $0. What's it? Consortium?
Consortium would be a group of bodies or something. That's, I guess, what I call a consortium. A group of groups, consortium, group of people. But the Willie Consortium is a group of Willies, as in Willie the Warhawk. And yes, I just said that before the meeting. It is essentially the group of different Willie the Warhawk mascot costumes that we have on campus. This is a brand new request that was brought to us this year by none other than Advisor Bilgan in the room. So that's in there. So any questions about that particular group would be best suited towards her in this particular situation. After the meeting, if you had any issues.
If you want
We
to
didn't
talk.
fund that, so.
If you have questions about clarification, you can do that now too in discussion, of which we have 1 more second, 2 more seconds.
Let's take this.
Oh, Senator Gross.
Why is it $0?
Thank you for asking. This is a new request, so with it we took a certain level of scrutiny and to sort of just determine if this was the best group for this money to be requested from. And upon that deliberation, we weren't sure we could make a confident decision to allocate that money for this particular intended purpose and if it should come from this group. The Willie Consortium is more than able to go through to the CFAC Contingency Fund as we did find them eligible. So they're able to use those resources. We just weren't able to make an educated decision at this time. So that's why they were funded at 0 level and it's, sorry.
So dark, y'all.
I have a question. Why do you give some folks $1 and some folks $0 with the same rationale of encouraging them to utilize the contingency fund?
Great question. This doesn't necessarily have a bank account or any org code associated with us. There's no necessarily like administrative or accounting maintenance that'd be required and worthwhile to keep necessarily on the allocation list. And so this is just simply saying, and this came to us more as an idea rather than something that had actually been created. And so going through this process is the first step in the level of scrutiny that it's going to have to go through in order to gain funding in other circles. So if anything, this is just like mock trial, those little things with high stakes. Great question.
Any other discussion? Going once, going twice. Seeing none, with that, we'll move on to Women's Lacrosse Club as a duplicate with a total request of $0 and a recommendation of $0. Discussion? Going once, going twice. Seeing none, with that, we'll move on to WSUW 91.7 The Edge with a request of $17,851 and a recommendation of $15,731. Discussion? Going once. Parliamentary Patricus.
Not at all relevant. Please no one else leave. We are at a quorum, which is 11. If anyone else leaves, we will lose quorum and cannot continue the meeting.
Discussion? Going once? Going twice? Seeing none. With that, we have worked all the way through the workbook. Oh my gosh. Before we move into a vote, let's do a quick, big thank you to the SUFAC chair, Chase Zimmerman, the vice chair, Kuntz and Patricus, and the entire SUFAC leadership team. You can stand now. All of you, stand now, please. If you're on SUFAC, please stand.
If you're on SUFAC and you're in the
Or
room,
if you're the chair or vice chair, we've been standing the whole time. Thank you folks so much. Chair Zimmerman, would you like to say anything?
At this point, the ball's in your court with this particular matter. We've done an extreme amount of due diligence, over 50 hours worth, and that is simply looking at the time that the committee spent as a group. That does not include any personal time it took to watch the recordings if they missed a hearing, or watch the recordings if they missed a deliberation, or skip an org meeting to do those things, or all the work it took the budget office to prepare the over 200 emails that they are going to be distributing or helping me distribute in this particular situation. So there is a supreme amount of hours that go into this, and we don't make any decision without knowing exactly why we made it. Of course, there are 115 of these, so sometimes up here I need a second to remember, but for every single one that we go through, we do an extreme amount of due diligence in that moment to make sure we make the right decision. So this is balls in your court. Thanks.
All right. Any other discussion? Senator Hughes?
Yeah, so not to move out of order, but I just made an observation, and I could be wrong, like my eyes could be like deceiving me right now, but so from what we went over, it looks like there's college Democrats in the list, but I did not see any college Republicans. Is there any reason why that is?
They did not submit an allocation request.
Okay.
Yep.
Wonderful. Okay, with that, we've worked all the way through. So if we're going to move into discussion on the entire requested and recommended allocation. The total allocation request was $485,000, $485,504.86. That. And the total recommendation was $354,523.80. So those are, do we have good totals on there? That math working out? Can you say those again?
The math works.
The math works.
Yep, I would.
Do I need to say different numbers?
No.
No, it's good. We were just discussing the fact that ISA didn't get rounded like everyone else did, which is why we're 80 cents instead of an even dollar.
Okay. Parliamentary Chief?
I move to recommend I have to read look at another one, relook at one, do I have to move to look at it, or can I just make a motion?
You can
I guess point of information.
make any motion you'd like. I would yield to the advisor as to try to gauge what you're trying to do.
Historically, right? Someone would make a motion to change an individual allocation. If no one is interested in making an adjustment to an individual allocation, then you just need a simple motion that could be made by anyone that says, I move to approve the recommendations of the SUFAC committee as provided in the documentation. Because if you put the wrong number in, or our clerk never makes an error but flips it, you want it to match the document.
Perfect.
If that's what you're looking for.
Parliamentarian Patricus.
I move to recommend an allocation of $2,115 for the International Student Association rather than $2,114.80.
Sure.
Can I get a second? Senator Schmidt. Seconded. We're going to go to a roll call vote for that. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
You need 2/3.
I'm so sorry. When ready, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll? We are voting on amending that. Can we go to that?
Can I?
Oh, yeah. Cheers. Step in.
Would you be okay if I explain what they're voting on?
Yeah, you're going to do a better job of it than me. Really, it's important that
So
it's
essentially-
there.
Yes. So essentially, in a couple seconds here, you're going to see the new number in the WSG column that would reflect the changes that Senator Patricus's motion would want to do, essentially. And you're voting aye to accept his adjustment, which would be to increase it by 20 cents and round it up to be at a 0 cent level, which would make it in line with everybody else. Or a vote of nay would essentially be that you don't agree with Patricus and it should not be rounded up. However, in this particular situation, 2/3 vote is required in order to overturn this. So in order for the vote to pass, 2/3 need to vote in favor of this particular.
Eight of you.
8 of you. Thank you.
I'm going to open the floor to discussion right now so Parliamentarian Patricus can say why he just made that motion.
Yeah, just to keep in line with every single other group has been rounded up to an even number. So just to have that even number, so it has no cents, just dollars. And keep consistency with every other group.
Any other discussion? Even clarification as to why the motion was made? Makes sense to everybody? Going once, going twice, seeing none. With that, we're going to move into a roll call vote. Vote of aye will be in favor of adjusting Parliamentarian Patricus's adjustment. A vote of nay will be not to make said adjustment, which is rounding. Madam Clerk Emeritus, would you please call the roll?
Senator Carter.
Aye.
Senator Kosio.
Aye.
Senator Dorsey.
Aye.
Senator Esterholm.
Aye.
Senator Gross.
Aye.
Senator Houston.
Aye.
Senator Kelleher.
Aye.
Senator Khan.
Aye.
Senator Michael. Senator Patricus.
Aye.
Senator Schmidt.
Aye.
Senator West. Speaker Wilson.
Aye. And with that, the amendment has passed unanimously. Wonderful. Can I get the final recommendation to reflect that really quick? Oh, whenever you're ready.
Or you need to vote.
Yeah, the bottom there.
Working on it.
And if we can reflect it on the record as well. Wonderful.
Okay.
Any other discussion on the total allocation, which is now the request of $485,504.86 and a recommendation of $354,524 even. Any more discussion on that? Just to be very clear, after discussion, we're going to move into a vote on the entire work. Going once, going twice, seeing none. Wonderful. With that, we're going to move into a roll call vote on the entire workbook, which means every line item we just went through, if you're cool with it and you want this to be WSG's official total allocation recommendation, good, you vote aye. If you are not in favor of that, you vote nay. Does that make sense to everybody? Gauging with thumbs. Perfect. Can I get a motion for that? I'm not going to make it. Parliamentary Patricus.
I should also not make this.
Yeah, you should make the motion if there's any conflict of interest here. Can I get
There's no
someone who is,
conflict, but he serves on the committee.
yes. That's what Senator Carter.
Motion to approve fiscal year 26 SUFAC request.
Wonderful. Can I get a second? Seconded by Senator Khan. Wonderful. With that, we'll move into a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, when you are ready, would you please call the roll?
Senator Carter?
Aye.
Senator Cosio?
Aye.
Senator Dorsey?
Aye.
Senator Esterholm?
Aye.
Senator Gross?
Aye.
Senator Houston?
Aye.
Senator Kelleher?
Aye.
Senator Khan?
Aye.
Senator Michael?
Aye.
Senator Petrikis?
Aye.
Senator Schmidt?
Aye.
Senator West?
Aye.
Speaker Wilson?
Very proud of that. And with that, the SUFAC budget allocation recommendations for fiscal year 26 has been approved unanimously. Thank you very much, Chair Zimmerman. Thank you very much. SUFAC leadership team as a whole. Does anybody have any questions on that process? If you do, you're free to ask them afterwards as well. Chair Zimmerman.
Point of information, I guess, for folks. We do annually review SUFAC policy and all related policies that we have control over. So basically, we're not reviewing system policy. We're not reviewing state, policy or anything like that. We're reviewing our SUFAC and our UW-Whitewater policies. That it will happen next semester. So if anyone has any thoughts, I have a ton that are going to go into some certain changes and stuff that will come to you next semester. If you are choosing to return as a senator next semester and run your seat back, you'll be seeing me again, and some other folks from the non-allocable leadership team will be up here, essentially proposing different changes to the policy that guided this entire process. So if you're interested in that, or you have any thoughts, or you thought maybe there are some hiccups throughout this that are not necessarily, can we pull up the right document on the screen, or anything like that, or are we looking at the same documents, policy-related issues, my email is sufac@uw.edu, and I'm more than happy to listen to what you got to say. So, with that, I'm done. Thank you.
Folks, thank you so much. Safe travel if you're going back in the cold here. You're more than welcome to stay and watch the continuation of our meeting. For the folks in the room who just participated in your first, second, third, fourth SUFAC process, congratulations. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your amazing questions. If you have anything on the SUFAC process, you're more than willing to say it now. Otherwise, one more round of applause. Thank you all so much. With that, we will move back in order to reports, starting with external committee reports, of which we have none, onto internal committee reports, of which we have none, onto officer reports, of which we will skip President Doug Bradley, although he says happy Monday, and we will move on to Vice President Mark Van.
Awesome. Good evening, y'all. President Bradley and I last week have been working on interviews for our Lincoln Associate Student Affairs position, of which we will have one presented to you later on tonight. But as for this week, I'll be attending the service honoring Veronica Warren. I'll be meeting with Directors Strary and Linneman. Then I'll also be meeting with Advisor Zilligan and picking up our plaques from American Awards and Apparel. And one more thing, since President Bradley is not here, many of y'all may not know, but he has been feeling very under the weather lately. He's undergoing surgery on Wednesday. So Advisor Billigan will be sending out an e-card, and I would highly encourage every one of you to go and sign that. That will be sent out through Connect2. And with that, I yield to my report.
Any questions for the Vice President? I have one. Honoring Veronica, could you elaborate on that?
Yes, so she has decided to step down from her position, and there was a service that was held today that I attended.
Honor you, yes. She's still.
Yes.
And with that, we'll move on to the report of our WSG advisor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Nothing much, just sending you a message through Connect that has all the dining hours for December 9th through 12th. So please feel free to share that with other folks. So you know where you can get your fuel. That will help you get many good grades. And should you need anything, please reach out to me before the 12th of December. as I will be having surgery then. So if there's something I can do to help you with things that you need to get done before the end of the semester, please reach out. You can put yourselves on my calendar through Outlook. With that, Mr. Speaker, I will yield to questions.
Any questions for our advisor? Going once, going twice, I have one. Is it true that the speaker would have been completely useless today had it not been for your amazing guidance?
Untrue.
No, that is indeed true.
Untrue.
Thank you so much.
You did very well. You all did very well. I appreciate it.
On to e-board report, starting with the report of our Director of Academic Affairs, Ms. Abby Reiser.
I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving. So last week I did enjoy Thanksgiving, but I also worked on a document, and if some of you are in the SAI text group, then you should have received a link to resources that the campus offers. So please look at that if you need anything, like there's sick meals, there's a link to like free spaghetti dinners, that kind of good stuff. So take a look at that. As for this week, today I went to honor Veronica Warren as well. And then tomorrow, the Academic and Student Affairs Committee has a meeting at 8 a.m. in UC 260, so please be there. I have a discussion about placements with Dean Colette Klingenberg and Andrea Edney related to placements and the communication with that. And then tentatively, there's supposed to be an advisory board meeting for career services. I'm still in communication with Josh Reed about that. So if you have any questions related to that, and want more information, please see me after the meeting and I can provide more about that. And then I have my bi-weekly with him on Thursday, and then I'm analyzing the career services survey data so that I can provide that at our advisory board meeting. And then an advising survey went out today to half of the student body, so 4,155 students received it. The next half will get it next semester. So please take a look in your email. It would have been sent by Marissa Gruhl-Hainstock, who is the Director of Academic Advising on campus. Please fill that survey out. When I'm doing work within advising, they really like data, so please fill it out so that you can share your feedback about advising. And then over break, I'm continuing work related to advising, working with the STELIC student messaging team, and then continuing career services work. So with that, I yield to any questions.
Any questions for our advisor of academic affairs, Director of Academic Affairs? Parliamentarian Troops.
What does that survey look like? Do you have any like sample questions on there?
For the advising one?
For the advising one, yes.
Yeah. So it's on Qualtrics, and basically there are, I'm going to say 6 questions related to how do you feel about communication, how do you feel that your advisor knows the degree requirements, the general education requirements, do they care about your well-being? So there's some general questions, and then you'll indicate, well, the system already knows what your major is, so then you'll be directed to specific major related questions so that the college can get an understanding for ways that they can improve.
If a student has 2 majors in different colleges, would they receive both questionnaires or just the primary?
The primary.
Okay.
Any other questions? I have one. You mentioned earlier the advisory board meeting.
Mm-hmm.
You said if you have any questions,
Yeah.
could you give me the spark notes, as a director emeritus might say, on what that would look like if I did have questions?
So basically, we've had a meeting. There's been some, I had my bi-weekly with him before Thanksgiving, and so I emphasized that the when to meet, because we're trying to figure out when some of the students can meet, needs to be sent out before break. So it was sent out before break, and then I emailed them again today, and so basically, I'm just waiting to receive an email about when it is going to be this week. So it's just kind of been a little bit of some miscommunication, you could say, but I'm working to get that covered.
We appreciate that. Any other questions? Going once, going twice, seeing none. On to the report of our Director of Student Affairs, Joe Alster.
Happy 14th week, everybody. Pretty crazy. So Thanksgiving, I hope it all went well for y'all. Hope it was restful. Hope you got to eat something or just recenter yourself in these last 2 weeks. So this week I'm going to have a meeting with Vice President Parker Bain, and then we're also probably going to be talking about a little bit about the campus police and off-campus police. Continue on with that thing that we got going on. I also attended that event to wish Veronica Oren some farewell. Also, a reminder, we're going to have the internal committee for student affairs and academic affairs tomorrow at 8 a.m. in the UC 260, so please make sure to be there. I'm also going to be meeting with Terry Tombrello just to discuss some housing concerns. So I believe that is all I have. In my report.
Any questions for our Director of Student Affairs? Once or twice, I have one. Has a calendar invite gone out for the meeting tomorrow?
It will.
Okay.
It hasn't.
It has been.
Okay.
It's, was sent out like 3 weeks ago.
Okay, great, thank you. And another question.
Yes.
I'll see it. Any other questions? Going once? Going twice? See now, on to the report of our Director of Human Affairs, Laura Smith.
Hi everyone. Last week I continued candidate research and had some really great food with my family. This week I have City Council tomorrow, 2 other city initiative related meetings. I'll be meeting with Chief of Staff and Senior Strategy and Compliance Officer Gabby Drawley. I have an election follow-up meeting finally with some key players in the elections process to kind of debrief how we can optimize that for future elections. I'll be meeting with the Elections Engagement Committee on Friday, which is exciting. We haven't met in forever. I have some work for you all. And then during finals week, I will be attending the projected last Spring Splash strategy meeting with this city. I yield to questions.
Any questions for Director Smith? And once, parliamentarian retreat.
Is there any way I can get more involved with my community, like the city, for example?
Great question. And you're a great example of this, Parliamentary Rodriguez. There are plenty of openings on different boards and commissions throughout the city, and if you are interested in those, I'm more than happy to talk to you about them. Additionally, there are some seats up for election in April if you're really interested. Those are not mostly students in those districts, so do keep that in mind if you're interested in running. But other than that, there's always, of course, volunteer opportunities within the city and different organizations you can be a part of.
Any other questions for Director Smith? Going once? Going twice? Seeing none? Wonderful. With that, we'll move on to the report. WSG, Mark Emeritus. Still current.
Thank you for letting me be your clerk again. I'm not graduating yet, so if you ever need anything, please just email me or text me. My personal number is on the business cards downstairs, so take them if you think you'll need something. But yeah, I'll be around, so that's all. Thank you.
Any questions? When it comes to being clerk, there is it's one of the heftiest positions in the organization, and we don't just give emeritus status to anybody. And the individual sitting to my right has more than earned it 1,000 times over. Every single week, she is on top of her freaking game, and I would be lost without a good clerk, and the entire organization would be. From the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for everything. The last couple of weeks has been an honor and a pleasure. Question mark. That is my question for you. Okay, wonderful. Any other questions? Can we give a quick round of applause for our clerk? Wonderful. On the report of our Senate Parliamentarian, David Rodriguez.
Yeah, so your term, just a reminder to everyone in the room, I guess, not everyone, to the senators in the room, your term ends, and I pulled this straight from the Constitution, the day before the first meeting of the spring semester. So that first meeting will be February 3rd. So your term will end February 2nd. So if any special sessions are need to be called, so if anyone with the SUFAC process has any, we need to do an appeal or for whatever reason, you'll get an email and you'll be required to be at the meeting. Just for your information.
Any questions? Oh, sorry.
I have UTC tomorrow. If you have any technology concerns, let me know. If you enjoyed SUFAC and you want to be on it next year, come talk to me. I can get you some information. I know a couple people. Thank you everyone for the honor for this semester being able to serve as your parliamentarian. Enjoyed every second of it. Look forward to continue serving with all of you, or not all of you, but everyone who comes back. And I want to thank everyone for their time tonight, for the semester, for your entire time. If you're not coming back, I want to thank you, and I appreciate your time. If you aren't returning next semester, I want to thank you, and I want to welcome you back. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield.
Any questions for the parliamentarian? Senator West?
Do you happen to know if Deputy Speaker Irwin is taking office hours next week?
Next week?
Yeah.
Final week?
Okay.
No. I would assume this week.
This week will be the last week of office
Yes.
hours. Please get in the office, do your hour, scan the QR code. It would make us super. Any other questions?
Oh, that was my question.
Okay, wonderful. Going once? Going twice? Seeing none. On to, look at that, it's my report. So last week I did some SUFAC stuff to make sure that tonight went as smoothly as possible. And I ate Thanksgiving stuff, which was awesome. This week I did the Veronica Warren thing. It was awesome. She's been an honor and a pleasure to work with. Have Senate Leadership Review Board, all the kind of normal meetings. I've got some NULT stuff going on. I would like to say, Patrika's kind of stole my thunder, but thank you all so much for serving alongside me. This semester it was an honor. I hold this guy with a lot of reverence, and I think the kinds of things that we did tonight are the kinds of things that I love doing here with this body, so thank you all so much for being a part of it. If you have any questions about getting involved over break, your term, as parliamentarian Patrika's mentioned, it does not officially end until the day before the first meeting. So if you have any ideas, want to get involved, if the semester ends and all you can think about is WSG, I am still speaker and you are still a senator or whatever you are, and I would love to assist you in however that looks, in either facilitating your future in the organization or just your current in the organization. My Outlook calendar is up to date. Put a meeting on there. I'm not very busy next week because all my finals are papers. So this week's the busy week for me. Next week, not too bad. Any questions? Deputies? Wow, that's a throwback.
That's a throwback. Well,
Director Smith?
for those in the room who might not be familiar, what does NULT stuff look like?
Oh, NULT stuff. So NULT stands for Non-Alcohol Leadership Team. That is 3 members of SUFAC. So actually, the 3 members of the SUFAC leadership team, of which you saw tonight, Vice Chair Patrikas, the Chair Chase Zimmerman, and the other Vice Chair Nicole Kuntz, serve as the SUFAC leg, the WSG leg, looks like myself, Vice President Parker Vin, and Doug Bradley. There's a bunch of wonderful staff we have in the room that help guide us through the process, including Advisor Billigan, Frank Bartlett, who's in the room, and a bunch of folks who kind of help facilitate us in making decisions regarding the non-allocable fee. So what we did tonight is the allocable portion of the fee. The non-allocable portion of the fee is, think the Williams Center, think the Ambrose Health Center, the UC, all of that is non-allocable. So if you remember our training or have any other questions about that, we can get you relevant information between the difference between allocable and non-allocable, what that looks like, what that means. If you have interest in being on NALT in the future, it is always those 6 positions. So keep that in mind if that's something you're super interested in. It was an honor to get to be speaker this semester. Honestly, the most important job I think I've ever had. So thanks so much. I yield to any other questions. Going once? Going twice? Seeing none. Wonderful. With that, we'll move back into unfinished business, starting with S242502, Act updating Section 11 of the WSG Standing Rules. Madam Chair, You're welcome to take the podium, tell us a little bit about what's going on. We'll wait for it to pop up on the screen. We already got a rundown of this last week. This week is discussion and vote.
All right, so I kind of, like the speaker just said, gave you a rundown last week, but I'll highlight the major parts of it. So section 11, we're focusing on section 11 first,
We are
right?
on section 11.
Yeah, okay. So there were some grammatical parts, but the main thing in section 11 is the section about how a presidential candidate running without a vice presidential candidate, like the expectations for that. So basically, if the vice president, they'll follow the same path that the president would in that case. So. With that, I yield to discussion.
Okay, wonderful. With that, we'll move on to discussion. If you turn into your packet at the very last page, you will see Act updated section 11 of the WSG standing rules. Is there any discussion on any of the changes you see within the standing rules on the screen right now? Anything you've seen in the digital packet, which you could also find the copy there? Any discussion? Parliamentary Rodriguez?
I mean, they're mostly clerical. 1115 doesn't really, in my opinion, doesn't really change the process or the procedure. It's really just adding clarification. You may disagree. Now's your time to speak.
Discussion? I am in favor of this, mostly grammatical. 1115. If it were to happen again, or have happened in the past, this is the way we proceed, so it is really just kind of clarification. With that, any other discussion? Going once, going twice, seeing none, with that, we'll go into a roll call vote. Must pass by 2/3. Madam Clerk Mertz, please call the roll.
Senator Carter?
Aye.
Senator Kosio?
Aye.
Senator Dorsey?
Aye.
Senator Esterholm?
Aye.
Senator Groves?
Aye.
Senator Houston?
Aye.
Senator Kelleher?
Aye.
Senator Khan?
Aye.
Senator Michael?
Aye.
Senator Patricus?
Aye.
Senator Schmidt?
Aye.
Senator West? Speaker Wilson?
Aye. And with that, Act updating section 11 of the WSG standing rules is passed unanimously. With that, we will move on to S242503, Act updating section 12 of the WSG standing rules. Madam Chair, you yet again have the floor.
Yep. So again, there were some grammatical parts, but I'll highlight the main thing. So one of them was that in addition to an executive board member being able to be recognized for this award, we also put in the language for vice president, because that has been in the past a person that has been given this award. And then one of the other key parts that we discussed was the language related to resolution versus legislation. So we had conversations about what the word resolution means, and we came to the conclusion that to become an emeritus member, we suggested that legislation, not resolution, is used in
Point of clarification, who's we?
CRC. So resolution with that, you could technically have it be a presidential proclamation that grants emeritus status, but legislation is not going down this path of using presidential proclamation. So then after that, we discussed basically the emeritus status. They are not allowed to come back to the organization after they have been granted this title, and they can refuse the title as well. With that, I yield to any discussion.
Okay, wonderful. We will jump right into discussion. I'd like to start by, President Bradley didn't ask me to do this, but I did get permission from President Bradley to do this. In our CRC discussion, we had a really in-depth talk about what's going down here in section 12 in regards to emeritus status and how it can be conferred or given to a person. And in order to to be clear, I was on the side of the vote that ended up winning, which was to keep it, or to change it to the verbiage legislation instead of resolution, disallowing the ability for a presidential proclamation to give emeritus status. That said, I think President Bradley made extremely strong arguments as to why a presidential proclamation should be able to give emeritus status. Some of those arguments looked like it means more to the person who's getting it. It means more to past members who have received it in such a way. It is something that means a lot to a director who may have worked under a president and not worked in tandem with a member of the public or senator who may submit legislation. I think all of those arguments are rational and reasonable. I didn't find them as rational as the conclusion that CRC came to, and thus I will support you voting aye on this legislation. But I think it's important that you know that CRC took this decision with a lot of care. We put a lot of thought into this, and there were other members of CRC who agreed with President Bradley and made that clear in their vote. The vote was a split vote. If anyone in the room wants clarification on that, they may be in the room. Otherwise, I can speak on that to the best of my ability as well, with the understanding that they may not be in the room. Parliamentarian retreats.
The rationale for changing resolution to legislation was that resolution seemed kind of vague. I disagree, but I think legislation is very clear of what is a legislation, how an emeritus can be conferred. I guess to run through the changes again, Executive Board Member of the Year, the past two recipients of that have been vice presidents, so I think it only made sense to add vice president in there. 12.5 BC, or I guess 12.5 C, sorry. Sorry, Isabel, or Madam Clerk Emeritus. This wasn't, I guess there's no, I don't really want to speak on. I guess notes, the Senate can approve an exception with a 2/3 vote. And then anyone with legislation proposed recognizing them with emeritus retains the right to refuse such a title. So if, let's say, a bill was put up tomorrow giving me emeritus, I could say, I don't want that. And then I guess that's null and void, I don't have it.
Senator Keller?
Can you tell us what that vote was in the CRC?
I believe, I'm recalling just offhand, I think it was 3-6? 2 to 7?
The final,
Yeah,
so we voted.
Vice Chair and Madam Secretary in regards to CRC. Madam Secretary West. Do you have that? If you don't have it readily available, that's fine.
So we did take 2 votes.
Yeah, you go for it. Sure.
So we took 2 votes. The first one was, so the first was related to the, I don't think it's in here, the resolution, and then we re-voted, essentially voting for the same thing again. So the first vote wasn't that split?
So, would you allow me to?
Yeah, go for it.
So, I would hesitate to use the verbiage, as it was heavily disputed, as the same vote again. President Bradley is okay with me speaking on this in regards to him. I was somebody who used the verbiage, the same vote again. President Bradley is vehemently against that verbiage, as he thinks there are 2 very different messages being conveyed in the 2 votes that we have. If you will, I just need to see the screen, so I don't normally move around with this. But, so, to become an emeritus member, WSG legislation, naming them such will have to pass by 3/4 vote of the Senate, was the first thing that we tackled. It was the removing of the term resolution, and essentially saying legislation, barring the idea of emeritus status. So that was vote number 1, which was a vote of 7-2.
Yeah.
I believe, if I'm recalling correctly. Madam Secretary, interrupt me if you find it.
Well, he originally, there was language in here, that's why it's not in here,
Yeah.
that added presidential proclamation. That was
Yeah.
the first
Yep.
vote. It's not in here because we
Because we
voted
didn't decide
against it, but there was language that said legislation or resolution or presidential proclamation. But that's not in here because we didn't go with that.
Both votes?
That was the first vote.
So the first vote was what, Madam Secretary?
5-3.
The first vote was 5-3. And the second vote, if we have it, whenever you're ready, Madam Secretary, but the second vote was on actually enshrining the word legislation, which President Bradley saw as the difference being it now left the term unambiguous. So whereas presidential proclamation is definite, giving the ability of a presidential proclamation to codify emeritus status, that's the first thing that we voted against. The second thing we voted on, which could be seen as very similar, but was disputed as uniquely different because we're voting on the ambiguous nature of the language that allows for possible exceptions, allowing for WSG emeritus status to be conferred via presidential proclamation. That was a lot of words. This is really wordy. I'm sorry that it seems kind of bogged down in this way. Does anybody have any more discussion? Parliamentary, please.
I think looking at what CRC voted is important for context and what different people thought of what it is just for context, so you have all the information you can possibly have. But with that being said, I would not take what anyone else thinks into consideration and use solely what your beliefs are and what it should be.
Madam Secretary West, I'm assuming in this regard. No. Senator West?
I just want to point out that anyone, like the president can write legislation, anyone on the e-board can, senators can, so it's not like it's limiting.
Anyone else? Any other discussion? Going once? Going twice? Seeing none. Wonderful. With that, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Senator Carter?
Aye.
Senator Cosio?
Aye.
Senator Dorsey?
Aye.
Senator Esterholm?
Aye.
Senator Gross? Aye. Senator Houston?
Aye.
Senator Kelleher?
Aye.
Senator Khan?
Aye.
Senator Michael?
Aye.
Senator Petrucci?
Aye.
Senator Schmidt?
Aye.
Senator West? Aye. Speaker Wilson?
Aye. And with that, S-242503 Act updating Section 12 of the WSG Standing List has passed unanimously. Wonderful. With that, we'll move on to new business, starting with the approval of the Associate Director of Student Affairs, Vice President Bain. Senator Khan, you're welcome to join the podium now. Senator Vice President Bain, whenever you're ready, you have the floor.
Excellent, thank you. So I have a prepared message. It's going to be short and sweet for you today, Senator Khan. But here we go. With his unwavering dedication, attentive listening, and servant's heart, Zabe creates and nurtures inclusive communities that are purposefully designed to enrich student life. Guided by his innovative mindset and genuine passion for fostering student success, he continuously seeks new ways to inspire growth, connection, and meaningful experiences for all those he serves.
Wonderful. Zabe, you have the floor if you'd like to speak. Associate Director of Student Affairs, candidate Khan, you have the floor if you'd like to say anything.
I am Zabe Khan. I would like to promise that if there's anything that you guys think there, any changes, anything you want to bring, any ideas, I would love to help you in any sort of way possible. And I promise to help try to bring upon any positive change that I can. Nothing else.
Wonderful. That will move into questions. Let's take it slow, dive into a couple. Parliamentary Petrucci.
Yeah, if time, money, and labor were not an issue, what would you like to see changed on campus?
If time, money, and labor wasn't an issue, then I would give us the same endowment of Harvard, because there's so much you could do with that. an organization and directors could lead much change. And I personally can't state anything that I want to change, but I would leave that to the directors, the student body, and the people on this campus who are already here and who have experience.
Senator Hughes?
How would you describe your leadership style?
See, I would say I'm definitely not an authoritarian, but I would like to be, how do I say this? I would like to convey people's thoughts and ideas and try to understand them as well as I can. Give them as much information that I know to flesh out whatever thought they have, whatever plan they want to implement, and be a conductor in that sense, and grow people's ideas.
Senator West?
You were a tool in a toolbox. What tool would you be?
I think I've said this before, I would definitely be the car jack. I like holding up a project, making sure it's on good ground and it's on good foundation, and it can definitely get lifted and started.
Wonderful. I have a question. Associate Director of Student Affairs candidate Con. What expertise do you think you innately bring to the role that makes you a good fit? What do you think you have, either innately or gained, via your experience here on campus or in other realms, that makes you a good Associate Director of Student Affairs?
I'm a sponge for information. If you teach me something, I can hold on to that information for a while. I love making notes and I love understanding the information. I can learn pretty quick as I've done a lot of intern opportunities. That's my main thing. I would just say that, and that I'm good at getting the job done. So if you're telling me to do something, I'll get it done. I'll understand how to do it and how to get there.
Any other questions? We have time for two more. Director Smith?
What is something that your time in SUFAC has taught you that you think would inform your work as a director?
The understanding the process that organizations go through to get the funding that they get, and how we use that funding throughout a level playing field. Like every organization has the same understanding and is given the same grounds to get this funding. Understanding that and how to possibly better hand out information to these organizations for them to better allow to get as much funding as they can to give students the best experience on campus, as all organizations are currently seeking improving student involvement.
Any other questions? Take one more if you got it. Going once. Going twice. Parliamentary.
How do you manage time to stay organized?
As you guys have said, a lot of Senate meetings, Outlook calendar is a great way. And besides that, I just use Outlook. That's just with a one-hand tool.
All right, wonderful. With that, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll? Just to be clear, a vote of aye is a vote in favor of confirming Associate Director of Student Affairs candidate Khan. A vote of nay is a vote against. Madam Clerk, would you please call it?
Senator Carter?
Aye.
Senator Cosio?
Aye.
Senator Dorsey?
Aye.
Senator Esterholm?
Aye.
Senator Gross?
Aye.
Senator Houston?
Aye.
Senator Kelleher?
Aye.
Senator Khan?
Aye. Oh, abstain.
Senator Michael?
Aye.
Senator Patricius?
Aye.
Senator Schmidt?
Aye.
Senator West? Speaker Wilson?
Aye. And with that, Associate Director Zaid Khan has been confirmed unanimous. Wonderful. With that, we'll move into announcements. Who's got announcements going on? Director Rising.
Please fill out the advising survey. It's really important. It'll take like no time, less than 5 minutes. Again, it's really important, so thank you.
Director Smith.
Of course, we're all students first, but before that, we're people. So please take care of yourself and your mental health in this time. person, then student organizations. Keep that order in mind in these next couple weeks.
Senator Carter?
Basically, I bounce off of that. If you're stressed out about finals tomorrow, down by Willie's, there's a de-stress event. We're gonna have massage chairs, oxygen bar, and I believe a take-home craft, which is like painting your own rock or something. So, yeah, come out. I'll be there all day. So, yeah.
If you did not win election and you're wanting to return, keep in mind running for appointment at the first meeting.
I will go as far as to say, come see us after the meeting. Senator West? Parliamentary Treaties, do you have anything else?
I just want to wish thank you to our Madam Clerk Emeritus for her final meeting. Maybe.
Also mentioning the mental health stuff, please fill out that survey that we handed out last week. I'm going to print off some more of them and put them in the office on top of the bridge. I think we're gonna have it open for another weekish yet, and then we're sending the results to UHCS.
Vice President Pett?
Could I see Senators Kelleher, Michael, and Gross at the meeting?
This Wednesday from 10 to 11:30 is the late night breakfast, everybody's favorite end of semester event. If you want to see Terry Tamburello make some pancakes, you should really go to that and ask her. It's free to all students with or without a meal plan, so please go.
Any other announcements? Going around the room. It's been an absolute pleasure, folks. What a wonderful semester. With that, we will move on to adjournment. A motion to adjourn. Parliamentary Rodriguez.
Move to adjourn.
Seconded by Senator Costa. And with that, we will move into a roll call vote. Madam Clerk Emeritus' last ever roll call vote. Would you please call the roll for adjournment? Madam Clerk Emeritus, would you please call the roll?
Senator Carter?
Aye.
Senator Cosio?
Aye.
Senator Dorsey?
Aye.
Senator Esperholm?
Aye.
Senator Gross? Aye. Senator Houston?
Aye.
Senator Kelleher?
Aye.
Senator Michael?
Aye.
Senator Petruskis?
Aye.
Senator Schmidt?
Aye.
Senator West? Aye. Speaker Wilson?
Aye. And with that, the meeting is adjourned at 9:15. We're out of here.
Nick was insistent that it be under 9.
Nick, I thought you said
it was 9:15.
I'm bringing it. For Wednesday. I still want to explain for nothing.
Great, and I estimated conversation.
Sure, I did.
That's good. Yeah, okay, I might have just pulled it up today.
No, no.
So I know where it's at.
What, okay, just want to confirm.
Congrats, Dave.
Thanks, man, I appreciate it.
Excellent, that's all I heard. Thank you very much. Mr. Simon, what works best for you? Tuesdays,
So,
Thursdays.
do I have to do all this? It's like,
So required to do one per week. This week is.
Let's go.
That's
good. I like that one.
So you are required to do an office hour.
Tuesdays.
However,
So they asked me, what, the way the video works, and then it shows your Spanish. Okay. And it shows like a travel form. So it's like, you feel like here are 4 trips, it shows how much the 4 trips cost. usually what they do is they'll set a ceiling for how much based upon the number of people going and all those kinds of things. And what they do is they say, let's say now they're doing four, and I'm like, who needs to each $4,000, right? They'll say, here's $1,000. How you can go on 4 trips still, but we're only giving you $1,000. So they look at the whole picture and then be like, nope, we're gonna pay for one, but you can use $250.
So then this is where it gets.
And then, just out of curiosity,
It shows that right now.
Sure, so, there's so they're not burdening.
Wow.
It'll show like, and it's not.
I'll be over there in a
second.
I have no idea. As a child, I had to completely change my room back to normal. It was 2 hours. So now I'm gonna get back to quiz and then sleep.
I'm struggling to understand why we give our organization to make profit and not get paid well.
I completely agree.
I haven't totally looked, and then this is the other.
Same here, same here.
They're looking at it.
It was a pleasure. Do you need anything from me?
No, I would
Good?
I want to have and I'm gonna see my net profit is big fail. I'm gonna either so it's not really long, but they want some credit, so I brought if I was more, I would get it. And it doesn't show it like, I'm gonna if you want to go buy.
We'll continue. I remember this.
So if there was you'll see it on the course equivalent.
Even if it's a phone call, I don't care. Like, we just gotta see it all.
Yeah, for sure. I'll be back.
So I actually, some of the.
Right, so like,
You're the one who gave me the
You said it, I went, no fucking way. That's wild.
it's a policy.
Also, how did you do it now?
Like AP.
Alright, since I got you both in the same place, I want to ask, so what is it?
And I saw you over there, staring at
Yeah, like if there are any spots on different ones, right? It's just a matter of like if it can fit in my schedule, but I believe it can.
Is that
Like, I've
Friday?
I only.
I can't wear it
But it was like,
so 20 minutes per tree. Imagine 100 times 20 plus consideration. And so
It's like an all day. Is that before? Or is that during this class? Oh, okay.
So like I really don't want to say that because
Yeah.
that's the only intense part. But
I
I
want
mean,
to
it's really
encourage student organization.
the
Okay,
rest
so
of the
this
year
is
is
the
one
program.
meeting every
So
There's
there's
law
Friday, maybe a half hour.
Yeah, I was, cause I was, if it was like before the semester, then it probably wouldn't work because I got RA training, so
So like.
that would probably overlap, but yeah, I mean, during the semester, I mean, I don't know if like,
I mean, they'll like work around it with your.
Yeah, that one.
Or like, like 4:30, so ask.
No, I get it. It's not as heavy.
So when we have a certain amount of people, we can only have a minimum amount to vote on it. So our whole thing is meeting forums. We can't. If we have people meeting forums, we'll be okay. But we recommend to be there.
yeah, for sure.
I mean, would you be interested in like coming to a meeting this semester? Just kind of
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'd like to just like, or that's actually what I was gonna ask you.
What's this deal? Let me talk to
I'm gonna be there.
So like, if I
I'm
need
gonna
to
talk to Tracy too.
So this
I don't think we're technically.
you could have another fundraiser that makes more so that you like.
Whoever the speaker is, or the president is, to maybe get. See if you're still interested at that point, get you.
Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'd love to. And, like, I know, like, I think it was at the training that was, or what do you call it? Like, it was.
Yeah.
It was the thing that we all did to for student government. It didn't look like there were any extra seats, but maybe that'll change. I'm hoping that'll change because I definitely college business and accounting. See, like that's kind of like those things.
Their trip like reimbursement.
So
it's not like, oh, we'll take Jan's car and we'll just give her gas.
I find it very doubtful. Or next time.
So if I just have liability.
Yes, I don't know, you're on top of this right now?
Yeah, let me know. Otherwise, like I'm
We'll
fine
have
with.
openings for next year.
And my last question, I don't know if you.
So,
But I saw.
if you're still interested then, we'll get you, reach on us, and then, if you still.
I think you'd be really good at it.
Well, I appreciate it.
The college summer.
Yeah, I mean, it gives me time to just like go in there and like just watch like how it is, like take some notes, you know, kind of get more of the gist of it. Because like, you know, when I ran for student government, it was weird because like I didn't know how it worked at first. Like I haven't been to any of the meetings. It was just someone that I knew, you know, told me to run. So I'm like, okay. I don't want to do that again. Like I want to actually like sit down and just like observe and just actually get like a feel. So and that gives me time. I guess I kind of know how it works. But still, like it'll be interesting to like see how the meetings how the voting process.
I think it's honestly a lot of fun too. I enjoy it, and it gave me a bit. Yeah, he loved it.
I love it. I love it. You just sit down and you look and you're asking for $21,000 for a trip that.
Yes, not just a
Scott, the professors are gonna go on.
No, but
Stuff like that. Zero.
no, like you really need to dissect things. Like today we're going like budget. Oh, you have that's line by line item by line item. But like we will look at like specific items to that degree.
Imagine, look, you look at just the total. Imagine breaking it down like into 5 different lines, 5 different budgets.
That sounds really fun. I think that was something. That would be something I ever did.
It exists, but it's interesting, right, because it also applies to anything.
I mean, it's basically what I already do.
We really have, yeah.
It's the best way to boil it
I
down.
think it'd be diligent.
As you were saying, I was thinking like, the line is for limited.
Well, I
think that's the biggest thing. Like we have to be
So, I
diligent
mean,
about
there's
everything.
right,
Yeah.
the rights of the
I'm really surprised that I say.
And I've definitely heard some.
But,
Yeah. Found out.
there's.
Or we would have looked through.
Because like I said, I drew from
It's okay. We got it. And like,
Yeah, just let me know if any of the seats open up or just like when the actual meetings because I would like to just go there and watch. You know?
what are you doing this Friday? Because
I'm gonna talk to Chester.
Okay.
alright.
I think I have your phone.
Yeah.
Do you?
So
Yeah.
before it's just AP.
I don't know if I've ever
You're not
texted
great.
you. I don't think Or do you have a 262-378?
But there was a group
Yeah.
requesting like for like
Nick, and then we can kind of.
and so sometimes just depending
You want
on
to? What is up to
the
you?
layout,
Yeah.
what what the event is, what the committee kind of like how they.
See his name, and again, congrats on
Because I don't
associate
think
director of student
they're-
affairs.
Yeah, like they were raising.
You too, man. You too.
So.
Yeah.
Adding watermelon.
Well, I didn't start.
Yeah.
So you usually turn it on. I got your text.
Right, that's. I love that.
I'll let you know, it's like Friday, it'll get on my day.
I do too.
If anything, will be top of the list for
I don't know about y'all, but
film
I
that's
was
I
searching.
find it very.
Like, oh my God,
Yeah, it's fine.
Thank you very much. I'm pretty sure immediately signed it.
Yep. And it could vary because I don't think Friday will be that busy for me, but obviously it's fine. But I'm sure like find some time to go. Yep.
Like it doesn't have to be Friday, it's just been historically.
Oh, okay.
If Thursday works better for everyone, it can be Thursday. It's like a Monday at like 6.
Doing it sometimes, it's the same
All
thing
right.
with us when.
Well, thanks for telling me. Like, I'm just glad I kind of know more about it, you know? Kind of idea how the process works, you know? Tearing through it bit by bit, you know? That's like 50 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, thank you.
It's definitely important though, because,
I know.
Was that, did that happen?
you know,
As
it's
you know, it
it's our money,
happened
you
like
know?
last.
It's coming out of our.
I was married for years.
It's not as linear as it
She filled a full term.
Oh, right.
Yeah, but like today, like.
Yeah, I guess I just noticed.
Yeah.
All right, Parker.
I'm looking for it.
All right.
I'm on the
See, buddy?
I mean, God, I probably
I'm a damn good one.
How did you do it?
You have to remember who my mom
All
was.
right, I'll let you know.
Yeah. I know, right?
I'll see you next
Yeah, you should try it. I only flipped once tonight and it wasn't.
Yeah, so 4:30,
I gotta talk to Chase. I gotta talk to him.
Thursday night.
It's not alone.
Yeah.
It's not alone.
I'm sure. That's what I think it's in advance. I think you're advancing
I can
money.
wedge
Yeah.
from.
When you're advancing them the money to
11.
try their proposal and they have to net it out.
even like
So they have to
saying,
be
like that
sure
is really
that
bad.
much
It
advance
says
back
I just
in.
found out, and I'm like, but that was, you guys don't even have that much.
Right, I mean, like,
I
it
know, I
gets
remember
back in
like
there.
a lot of those were classroom on my phone,
Yeah,
and then
It's like a net, it's like, you gotta go buy gate bags.
It's a wedge. It's a wedge. I'm gonna start calling it a wedge.
That sounds like.
All right.
But you don't pay it back into the fund, you just take all the money that you make from the bake sale and you deposit it back into the account.
I even had issues with my transcripts.
Right, but it.
Where actually I
that's
sent
between
it in.
yourself.
They said they didn't have it, and I'm like, no, I sent it.
So that's why
And
to
then
me,
they
it's like,
actually
it's the
emailed me a
loan
month
thing that I
later
think
saying
that
they
we're.
didn't have it. And I'm like, no, I sent it.
So yeah, I
Because
got.
you can't donate, you can only donate the net, you can't donate the gross.
I'm not gonna point.
Well, no,
a finger
you
I'm
can't
not exactly
because
sure
you
how
have
the
an extra.
process. Who's in
Right, if
control
you're
of
buying
that, but I
cake
do know
mix,
somehow my
sorry.
transfer.
You're buying cake mix, you gotta pay for the cake mix. I don't know, I was sitting here, I'm like, I'm getting food, I'm getting food, I'm not just thinking anymore. What? Well, I mean, like, that's a small.
Yeah.
But they're emailing to the, they're emailing to the, like, did you?
Yeah.
I did get it.
When did you get it?
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me know.
I would be very, like, if right now, this is something I'm gonna go off.
Just got choked.
Because obviously this impacted me a lot.
I got a little
Yeah, you did roll call, so that's, yeah. Yeah, I know that you put it on, I don't know.
I mean, the entire process, everything from transfer to transfer.
I gotta try something crazy.
Actually, you know what,
It was
I
just
made
a mess.
the, let me check.
I like that idea.
I
Well, he's getting married
Was
soon.
forced to call
I
the
read-
department,
I
emailed
read-
them. There was no like
July.
center
Yeah,
place.
okay. Why did it save the date?
Oh, I have to call
I
this
did
place,
hit record.
email this
Okay.
What
person.
do you
Can
like
you
to
hit-
save the date?
Yeah,
Can you send
I'm gonna
those?
turn it off.
Totally.
No, that would-
Okay,
that would
I
be
was
really-
gonna live it if you sent them. and I
No,
didn't.
we did not send him yet. But anyways, I kind of
Related to like.
I want to get
I'm
something
finding
around.
details on the website
So I was thinking
so that I
about
can take
growing
notes
it.
on it.
Mhm.
And then-
And I'm sure I can.
Yes.
Oh, perm would be.
I'm sure I could probably find it, I'm sure I have emails.
Jen-